Վերջին ներկայացողը Antranig Bedrossian դիլոգները որ Գենսակրանը պատրաստել են առաջ չէի դրել որ ամարտը հասկանալուց Bedrossian ներկայացնում ավելի իր ադիպտերի մեջ բռնախճավան ինստիտուտի դնորեն Nakhchivan Institute of Canada is a non-profit organization whose mission is to act as a center for research and think tank on Armenian and international issues, among them the national question, globalization and regionalism, human security, civil society, and theoretical debates. It aims to establish an international network of scholars and interested persons to act as a forum for discussion and critical analysis of the Institute's fields of interest. It organizes and participates in many civil society projects. It has participated, among others, in public debates on various issues such as Armenia's ecological problems in 2008, Armenian women's achievements in 2010, and has issued a position paper on the infamous Armenian-Turkish protocols in 2009. It has also published translations of important texts such as Il faut sauver les Arméniens by Jean Jaurès, as well as Vers le socialisme du 21e siècle. I think some translations are available in front of the door. So without more to say, well, Bedrossian.
Çarşaf bütün programları beraber anlaştığım kortin, benim davutlarım başladım. Arabe bostiganca masın sonra diga polis state bostiganca belirken kavarne. İş atışlarda mayasa indika vicatne. Evgazekte spilki meşhadazirim kavarne. Ben bekliyorumuşkuşana gitmez. Maganstim dinle gayetman oraya bu geri İbrahim ne kadar olursa sunyanın modelin en müzmin ayos harcın. My thoughts will cover the following areas of the proposal: the geographical scope, the election of community leadership, the interventionist aspect, the transnational entity, the definition of national interest. Geographic scope. The proposed model intends to incorporate all Armenian communities in the diaspora, regardless of their differences in approaches to democracy. However, each Armenian community reflects the political, cultural, socio-economic traits of the country of residence. Although these countries have a different perception of democracy, its practical application differs accordingly. Therefore, the proposed model seems to be more appropriate for Armenian communities established within the geographical space of entrenched Western liberal democracies, North America and Western Europe, and its periphery, Latin America, rest of the European Union and Australia. On the other hand, some other communities like Middle East, Iran, Russia, and Ukraine represent a different concept of society. This reality tends to limit the geographical application of the model in the intermediate future. In this context, where do we classify Turkey's Armenian community, which is considered indigenous into Asia Minor? Where is the place of convert and crypto-Armenians in this proposal? I believe that the time has come that we expand the definition of Armenian identity in order to integrate these two segments of the Armenian nation that were isolated from under Ottoman and Turkish occupation of the Armenian homeland. Now, the election of our community leadership. Through democratic elections based on the principle of one man, one vote, the proposal intends to legitimize community leaders and establish mechanisms of governance and accountability. However, who will be the potential candidates? Given the political and economic nature of functions pursued, many elected persons will come from economically strong segments of the Armenian communities, including businessmen, professionals, academics. Will that be considered representative enough of various community segments, socioeconomic tendencies such as worker, gender, and ecological movements? Will the ordinary Armenian community member find itself genuinely represented, his or her opinions and aspirations truly understood and defended by the elected leaders? This proposal takes its inspiration from the model of representative democracy. But don't we see that even this approach in practice is encountering working difficulties in the Western liberal democracies? Critics in the West often point to a deficit in this democratic model. Elected representatives cater less to their electors' demands and more to holders of powerful economic interests. After a while, we can expect to see the same deficit taking place in the elected leadership of the Armenian communities. Moreover, this system paves the way for the community segments, wealthy segments of the given Armenian community, strong in economic power, but minority in number, to acquire effective leadership and through elections legitimize their voice in the community decision-making and conduct the affairs in accordance with their worldviews and interests not necessarily shared by those of the majority members of the community. This is democracy, more in form, but less in essence, and does not leave adequate space for alternative decision-making in favor of the popular segments of the Armenian community, representing the majority. It only gives them the lobbying option to promote their positions with the elected governing bodies, where the relative power makes a difference. The interventionist aspect, by permitting the elected leadership to decide the most qualified and acceptable Armenian community candidate in local elections of the country residents, in the event of many candidates, the model becomes interventionist. The choice of the most qualified candidate then takes place according to the worldview and the interests of the leadership, which may not be within the interests of other segments of the community. The elected leadership thus acquires the right of last consideration in the choice of Armenian candidate entering the election race of that country. To what extent is this democratic? Now the transnational entity, the global governing body of the Armenian diaspora. This takes place when proposed 350 delegates from diasporan communities organize the governing body's chairmanship, various subcommittees and other structures. Elected candidates of the transnational body conduct limited number of meetings per year. This leads into the constitution of a bureaucratic structure, which, although formally accountable to the transnational body of delegates, can develop itself into an executive apparatus acting according to interests and remain distant from community grassroots, acquiring the character and the modus operandi of corporate structure. It then becomes less democratic, less accountable, and more hierarchical like transnational corporations. Through the relative power of Armenian communities, major powers, US, France, and Russia, can acquire this decisive but contradictory influence in the decision-making processes of their transnational entity. This may not be within the collective interest of the Armenian diaspora. The definition of national interest. The term national interest needs to be defined. The nationalist approach of this term implies those major issues that receive significant Armenian collective support. The socio-economic approach can, however, reflect the hidden private interests of the dominant wealthy force of the Armenian diaspora seeking to legitimize those interests. To summarize, this model needs more refinement to make it more democratic, both in form and in essence. Provision should be made so that the full spectrum of socio-economic tendencies from left to right of each Armenian community are adequately and fairly represented at both levels of the community leadership and the object delegates of the transnational entity. The objectives and the decision-making process adopted, as well as the projects voted, should be reflect that spectrum. This arrangement can best maintain the spirit of unity in diversity. Now I go to the second test, the projected Congress of Western Armenians. Now the question of mission. Different elements are introduced between the original mission statement and the latest draft proposals. It primarily intends to create a unified structure to pursue the various claims of Western Armenians from Turkey, spread across the diaspora in Armenia. It does not intend to constitute a diaspora unified structure for all Armenians. Latest additions to its draft proposals include development and implementation of pan-Armenian plans in support of Armenian arts, assist the diaspora in the preservation of and awareness of Western Armenian identity, cooperation with all nations and peoples. These added statements dilute the centrality of the original mission, that is, pursuit of claims from Turkey, duplicates the work of other diaspora organizations, and gives itself the prerogatives of a non-territorial state structure. Elections and delegates. Since delegates from various Armenian communities will not be elected, therefore there are no delegates, but members from these communities who would form the Constituent Assembly. Interpretation of history. The preamble of the initial declaration contains a rather one-sided interpretation of historical events for the period 1878-1921. All reference to these events and their interpretation are misplaced in the declaration, and they should be discussed within the appropriate institutional structures. Claims on behalf of Western Armenians from Turkey. Where claims for properties are made for generational Western Armenians possessing appropriate documents, any recovered proceeds should be deposited in a trust account and then distributed to the claimants directly. Particular attention should be paid to the situation in Armenia. In order to prevent the legal appropriation of these funds from some people in authority, claimants from Armenia should receive the proceeds directly. Avenues should be explored whether it would be possible to get general compensation from Turkey for moral loss and damage sustained for descendants of survivors in 1915. Such funds, whenever received, should be deposited in an appropriate trust account and disposed of according in the wishes of these descendants, to remit them directly or allocate them for rebuilding Armenia and Artsakh. Any funds that will go to assist rebuilding Armenia and Artsakh should be administered jointly with diaspora in order to ensure their proper disbursements.